No matter what you think somebody else has, you don't know what price they paid or are paying for it, and you don't know if you're willing or able to pay that price. You talk about suicide and depression. I've seen dentists making 2 or 3 times more than I do in their lives. Happiness first.
If you're comfortable, you're not growing.
Welcome to another episode of Dental Marketing Theory. I'm your host, Gary Bird, and today I get the opportunity to interview Dr. Allen, and he has the book, Enjoy the Ride. We talk about how to love yourself, how to know you love yourself. Also, we talk about how to build a better culture inside of your office and how to make dentistry enjoyable again. I know a lot of dentists struggle with that. We even go down the road of why dental has such a high suicide rate and what we can do to try to help solve that. So you're going to want to listen to this one. This is a great episode. Stay tuned. All right, Dr. Allen. So why don't you share with us how you got into the dental industry?
It's a really interesting story. It's a resilience story, Gary, because I, as the nice son of a Jewish mother, was always told you have to go to medical school. We joke around a lot. And, there's a saying in our culture, life begins in medical school. And I didn't make it. I didn't make it. And I was down in the dumps I was really down and out. And I was managing a retail store. And I went to my best friend. His dad was my dentist. Mm. And I went to the swimming club with Mark and Dr. Bob and their family. And Dr. Bob said, "What are you doing with yourself?" And I said, "Well, I'm managing a store. I don't know what I want to do. I didn't get into medical school." And I had that scarcity misery mindset. And Dr. Bob, us being native New Yorkers, he said a word to me that, why don't you stop blanking around, be a dentist? And I said, "Dr. Bob, I don't want to be a dentist. I don't want to stick my fingers in people's mouths." And Dr. Bob says, "Come down to my office. Will you please stop whining and watch how much fun it is?" And I stopped whining. I hung out with Dr. Bob, and Dr. Bob was one of these old community guys. The patients love him. They called him Bob. They never called him doctor, let alone Dr. Leidenheim. And I fell in love with what he was doing. And it to this day is a model for how I run my dental practice. I don't treat patients, Gary. I treat friends. And it makes it a lot more fun. It really does.
So your main job is running a dental practice, but I know you're writing books, which we're going to talk about.
Oh, you got it. Oh, thank you.
Got it. Checked it out. And so you write a book. What else are you doing? What else are you doing in the dental industry? Because I feel like you got your hands in a lot of things.
I'm coaching other dentists individually and mastermind group. I speak to small groups. I speak to dental meetings. At some point, we'll have the large stage, but right now, my audience is dental study clubs and small to medium-sized meetings. My area is happiness in dentistry, because I want people to know that in this profession, we do work that makes a difference. And we got to know that inside.
Yeah. Why do you think that dentists? So I actually did yesterday. I was shooting some content and I've talked to a lot of dentists about this. And one of the questions that I was asked is like, "Hey, I've heard that dentists have a high suicide rate. Why is that?" And I've heard several different things. So you got obviously the pain involved with dentistry, right? And so you have people end up taking pain medication. You have the loneliness of entrepreneurship. You have, the other factor of trying to be an entrepreneur and running a business, but you also have to be a dentist, which are two different things and hard to do at the same time, right? And so you have these factors pulling on you. But from your perspective, why do you think that dentistry deals with this level of depression that we see that's like pretty much outpaces all the other people who would be similar to a dentist? And it's prominent in men and women, which is unique as well, right? Which I blew my mind, because normally guys are more prone to that kind of thing. I'm being careful with my words so we don't get censored and things like that. But female dentists as well. So what are, from your perspective, why do you think that is?
Hey, sorry to disrupt the show, but I just have a quick commercial for you. we are going to be hosting 4 events over the next 12 months, and we're doing a little bit of everything for everybody. We have something around Full Arch. We have something for those that manage marketing. We have something for those that want to scale their practice at Dykema. And then also we have something next year that's for everybody in your practice to learn business skills and to really maximize the opportunities for you to grow your offices. You're not going to want to miss these. Visit smcnational.com/events. These are going to be the premier events that you're going to want to go to make sure that you're getting the tactical skills that you need to continue to grow the way that you want. Because at SMC, we're all about growing.
It's everything you said, Gary, and then some. What happens in dental school is we are subliminally taught that if it's not perfect, if our work is not perfect, it's unacceptable. And if your work's unacceptable, you're unacceptable. That's the subliminal message. Now, let me temper that by saying dental school instructors are people just like us, plodding their way through the world. It's just that the culture of this education system is perfect or nothing. And Gary, you know as well as I do, having been around the sun a couple of times, there is no such thing as perfect.
Yeah.
And
there is now a question on that. So I agree with you with the dental side of the perfection thing. I've had actually dentists. One time I have a funny story. We put up a picture. So an office staff member sent us a picture to put up on one of our clients' websites. We said, sure, no problem. It was a before and after, right? And we put it up. Lady had a beautiful smile. Like it looked great. So we put it up on the site. And the doctor calls or emails us and he was like, what in the world did you put this on my website? This is like the most horrible thing. And I said, what are you talking about? And he went into very technical terms of why it wasn't a perfect smile. But no patient would ever know that, right? No patient.
Yeah.
Only another dentist would have noticed that.
Yep.
And right then it clicked in my head, like they have a level of expectation that maybe only a couple thousand people, other dentists would actually catch that, but nobody else actually sees.
Yeah. So that then, you get into that. And by the way, we see on so many of the sites that you and I visit, we see dentists really brutally criticizing their peers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That reason.
Yeah. So do you think dentistry attracts perfectionists, like people who are more geared towards that mindset? Because here's what I've always thought. If I wanted to be like a brain surgeon, like the perfection never comes into the conversation, right? You just are just trying to make sure you keep people alive. Heart, same thing. There's other people out there. In dentistry, you can create almost a perfect smile, even though the rest of the body's failing, right? Like you are the master of your domain. So I've always wondered, does it attract perfectionists and that's what the culture that it creates? Or is it the other way around where it takes people and then it puts that culture of perfectionism, or maybe it's both?
It attracts highly competitive people because it's very competitive to get into school. You've always got that looking over your shoulder thing going on, and you're always comparing. So if the dentist in the other building right behind mine in the condo complex has a larger office or may drive a nicer car or may do things that I don't do, if I fall into that comparison trap, I see myself as inferior.
And that's a people problem. We all fall keeping up with the Joneses. And I think it's a scarcity versus an abundance mindset, where scarcity says, as a marketing company, if the other marketing company's bigger, better, whatever, then I can't win. Like if them winning equals me not winning, or my dental office, their dental office is successful, so mine can't be successful because theirs is. Where abundance says, no, we can both be successful. Like we tackle this problem a little bit differently than each other, and we can both hit our goals and be happy.
Yep. We never really cared about this until probably the mid 80s, when all of a sudden the advertising thing came about. Before 1980 something, we didn't advertise. We hung out a shingle. The people who came. There was plenty for everybody. And we all became very prosperous, very materially wealthy. The problem is now there's a lot of advertising. There's a lot of competition from different niche markets. And I think, as you said, we now have to become a lot more entrepreneurial and doctorly, care for people at the same time, care for our businesses. So now we got to be a little more sophisticated and say, all right, this is who I want to treat. This is what I want to do. how much is enough in terms of monetary income, material income? What do I need to do it? And if I want more, what do I need to do to get more? That's the healthy way to do it. But if we're looking over our shoulder and saying Dr. Gary Bird drives a Ferrari,
Yeah.
and I only I, the mere peasant, drive a Lexus. Oh my God, I'm garbage.
Yeah.
And it happened to me, Gary. It's part of my story. If you heard in the book, I tried to be something I wasn't. I overextended myself and paid the price.
Yeah. So let's talk about your book. So where did the origin of your book come from? Why did you decide to write the book, Enjoy the Ride?
That's a good one. I decided to go into coaching to help dentists find their why and communicate with their teams and their patients and really develop their happiness. So I engaged a fantastic business coach. I don't know if you know the great Mark LeBlanc.
I've heard the name before. Yeah.
Mark is my guiding light.
Wow.
And everybody needs a coach. You know that.
Yep.
And so I start working with Mark. He said, Alan, you're writing a book. I said, Mark, I have a practice to run. I've got this thing to take care of. I have no time. He said, Alan, you're writing a book. And after about the fourth back and forth, all right, Mark, I'll write the daggone book. That's how it happened. And it's based on the lessons that I learned, Gary. It's my story and all of the things that happened to me that caused me to realize that life is pretty darn good, even if you're not the richest and most brilliantly accomplished dentist with a Taj Mahal palace of an office.
So do you think, and I really like the part where you said that there's not one formula for success and we're not guaranteed to happiness, that there's a lot of different roads that we can take. And I think that's really important because a lot of times what we see this in young people, especially, they get online and they're trying to figure out how to make money and they bump into a TikTok or a video that says, do this exactly thing and you're going to be rich. And it's like, yeah, right. It doesn't ever work that way, right? Like, yes, no. Sometimes somebody gets lucky and invests in Bitcoin early on, but that's the outlier. That's not the rule. So when you're dealing with dentists who usually do have a lot of success from a business standpoint, they're successful, but from an emotional standpoint, there's a lot of problems there. It's prevalent, right? It's documented. How do you help them get on that path?
What I want to do is try to pinpoint them to what makes them happy, what procedures they like to do, what things they hate. There are associates, there are a couple of year experience associate making tons of money. But you know what? No matter what you think somebody else has, you don't know what price they paid or are paying for it. And you don't know if you're willing or able to pay that price. So my suggestion is you follow the U.S. Constitution that guarantees us the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of a Tesla. No. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of a big house. No. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Find your sweet spot. Find your happy. I'm from New Jersey, so I can say this. Make it so that Monday morning doesn't suck.
Yeah.
And go in and look, we all want to play. Our weekends are great. Our families are great. Our friends are great and so on. But if we have to work, we might as well make it as pleasant as possible and let the money flow with that. You talk about suicide and depression. I've seen dentists making 2 or 3 times more than I do in their lives. Happiness first.
So how do you do that? So I'll share my journey with you and you can tell me, hey, Gary, you're on the right track, or, here's what I would adjust for at a dentist. But what I did, so I started building an agency from the scratch, from the ground up, ground zero. And I would just went out, like just banging on doors, you know what I mean? Chasing down clients and trying to figure it out. I knew nothing. I had no schooling. Talk about just ignorance is bliss, right? And so I went out there, learned, eventually got in, started working with dentists. And I got to the point where, I just thought, okay, well, if I in my agency, if I can just do just sales, I'll be happy. So then I built the agency around just me doing sales. And then quickly I was like, I don't want to do sales anymore. Right. Well, if I can just manage accounts, I'll just be happy. And I didn't want to do that. And then if I can just manage, the marketing, and then it's just like, I don't want to do that. And so I go on and on and on, and I slowly work myself out of a job, and eventually I got to the place where it was like, you know what? I realized and this is how I did it. It's so simple. I took a piece of paper and I wrote down, and I did this multiple times. What things did I do today that I hated? That I don't want to do those anymore. I'll pay somebody else. I'll take a pay cut to hire somebody else to do those. And which things did I like? And that changed and evolved over time. And then so what I did is I just kept evolving that and letting that happen until I got to the place where it was like, I really like my schedule. Like, I really like what time I start. I really like what time I end. I really like the people that I'm working with. I really like each of the meetings I'm excited about. I get this opportunity to talk to awesome people like you. And then I realized I was like, well, cool. I optimized this. This is pretty cool. But what I realized now looking back was it's not that I didn't like doing the sales or didn't like doing the other things that I had in there. It's that I only get excited when I can have optimal growth in things, right? So like podcasting, I can keep making the podcast bigger and find more listeners and get more views and get better guests, right? I can always keep growing it. And so that keeps me excited. But when you say, hey, Gary, you know, this team is kind of optimized and now we need you to maintain it, I'm horrible at that. And it's very boring. And I would rather do anything else. I will do anything to avoid the repetitiveness. And then somebody taught me, Gary, you need somebody who makes it up. You need somebody who makes it real. And then you need somebody who makes it recurring. Which are you? And who's going to do the other parts for you? And once I realized that, then I started really piecing the right people around me. So that's kind of my journey. What, from a dental perspective, how can they kind of do the same thing inside of their business?
What you have to do first is step back from the dental office and look into your life. I like to have people go through an exercise and highlight the happy moments of their lives from their late teens, early adulthood through present moment. And then we find a recurring theme. And can I tell you a secret if you promise not to tell anybody? It usually involves love and happiness. It usually doesn't involve, but in some cases it does, a few bucks, or maybe achieving something physical, the construction or doing something physical. More often than not, it's relationship-based. So we focus on building appropriate relationships of love and caring, a loving culture in the office. Surround yourself with those people. Then identify those tasks which bring about that happiness after you built the culture, and delegate, and then grow. But without a foundation of who you are, for me, Gary, it's about a slow-paced practice. I've seen a lot, and I've done it. I've done the room-to-room thing, the roller skates thing. I don't care how much money it pays. I make enough. And that's another thing they have to realize. What is their BAM? Their BAM minimum, and build up from there. Not, I want to make the money that I think Gary Bird is making, because man, oh man, he's got to make. I want to know how much I need to sustain my lifestyle, my basic life, and what augmentations do I need, and what am I going to do? So we identify the procedures we like to do. We identify the most profitable, the most enjoyable. We refer the other stuff out, or we bring in-house people in to do it for us. We also have to have a team around us that's unified around the mission. So we have that dentist build a mission with their teams specific to them. My mission is to deliver the most appropriate dentistry in a caring, loving environment. That is what we do. And we have a series of behaviors that reinforces that. So I will do that for each and every dentist because everybody's different. Everybody's perception of a warm, loving environment, of great dentistry, of the types of people they want to be treating, about the role of dental insurance in their practice. That's huge, and we have to identify those things.
Yeah, so let's talk about culture, because I think that's a hot topic that everybody talks about, and dental offices are usually not known for great culture, and I think it's because the dentist is the CEO, but they're also the dentist, right? And that's hard to manage both. Like, it's really, really hard to do both. how are you helping people if a dentist comes and says, look, I love doing dentistry, but I do not like the people that I'm working with. They are, backbiting, and it's just drama. And I tried to fire somebody and I couldn't pull the trigger. Like, how do you begin to help them walk through that?
Well, first of all, what we do is we take the team, and hopefully the team as it is, and unify them around the mission of the practice. We unify them around their strengths and weaknesses. An exercise I like to do with them is have them all sit around and talk about the person sitting next to them, what they like about them, and talk about themselves, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, where they can help outside of their immediate domain, and where they need help, so that we have a sense of identity, strength, vulnerability, and desire for help and to help. That's number one. We build that mission statement with the team, and we're nice to each other. Now, what the owners have to understand is what Colin Powell said in his leadership book, and that is, if you do your best to bring a person along and they're not doing it, then you're doing a disservice to the organization by keeping them on. Sometimes you have to gently and compassionately let them go and say that, we're not a perfect fit. Let me help you find a job. The problem is in today's market, man, oh man, there's a scarcity of employees. So sometimes we have to compromise a little bit and work a lot harder.
That's true. Yeah. And I think that's shifting a little bit, but yeah, there's definitely a shortage of team members. Now, how much are you contributing, like, the culture issue to the leaders versus the team? So, like, I've always been taught, like, oh, everything falls on leadership. I've also heard people say, like, hey, you might have to, like, replace the office. Like, what's the balance there?
Well, the leader has to decide. And sometimes we could do it with emotional intelligence testing. I have an industrial psychologist who does that for me when I need it. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we as leaders have to make a decision after a nice, vulnerable talk with each employee who may or may not be conforming to the culture, and see if we can help them. Gary, you're my dental assistant. Gary, I notice that your demeanor is not quite what I really need here. And I have a need, Gary. I have a need because Alan, need to feel real good about being with you. I'm doing everything I can to make you feel great about being here. How can I help you feel a little better? And how can you help me feel a little better? Tell me your ideas on that, Gary.
Yeah. See, and if you're that's great, right? And that's a great way to handle it. But if you haven't, I could see where people would struggle with that, right? Because a lot of times people don't want feedback, or they're scared of the feedback, because they might say, you suck as a boss. Like, you yell anytime you get upset. You assume that we're always doing things wrong. And then now we conflate that in our head because it make it even bigger than what it really actually is.
Yeah.
And then we don't want that feedback. And so, and I'm just speaking from personal experience, right? Like, I've went through all of this as a leader. So that's hard. That's a hard thing to work through.
It's very hard, but if you know you're coming from a good place, if you know your intent is good, and you know you're not perfect, get over it. Doctor, you're not perfect. Team member, you're not perfect. Get over it. And let's open our eyes and our minds, because we see they see things that we don't, and we see things that they don't. And if we do it in a spirit of loving kindness, which is the missing ingredient for most businesses these days, and people crave that, Gary.
Yeah, no, empathy.
People need it.
Yeah, empathy and you said love, like just understanding from the other side of what people are going through. I totally agree. It's a huge secret weapon if you can learn to tap into that. So a little story,
vulnerability, man. That's where it's at.
Yeah, no, I so a little story about me. Pre-COVID, I thought culture was a buzzword that people used to sell books, and I had no interest in it. I did not care. I wasn't going to watch a video on it. I wasn't going to read about it. I don't care. That's silly. I'm here to work, and I'm here to be successful. And if you're here to be successful, then we'll all be successful together, right? And if not, then that's fine. But then what ended up happening is it created a toxic environment. Like, it wasn't a good place to work, and I couldn't understand why. And then once I started learning about, okay, you got to cultivate an atmosphere, and you have to talk, and you have to be vulnerable. And what COVID did, it forced me to communicate in a way that I would never communicate with the team. So it was like, we just lost 75% of our revenue. We took out this much loans. We're going to be going out of business very soon if this doesn't change, and we're all going to be out of a job. Or the economy turns around and opens up, and we'll be fine. And here's how that's going to work. So I just started being vulnerable, and the amount of support that I got from that was so overwhelming that I was like, I'm doing this all the time now, right? Like, I'm just going to approach every problem this way. And so now, but I think the tricky part there is that when before that, instead of being vulnerable, I got a lot of dopamine hit from solving people's problems. So they were like, well, I don't like that. And it's like, here, let me fix it. And then my company couldn't grow anymore because I was the bottleneck. And then being vulnerable doesn't actually give you dopamine hits, right? What it does is it sets other people up for success. And you have to retrain your brain that as these people are successful and as we grow, and they're happy and they're collaborative, that's where I'm going to get my dopamine hits from. But it's a longer period, right? So before it was fire, dopamine hit, but dopamine, and then it was like you have to kind of wean yourself off of that. That's what happened to me, yeah? And it was a long journey.
The world's different. The world is different today than it was in 2019. And also, we've become a bit better thinkers, those of us in leadership positions. And you know what, Gary? You own the agency. I own the office. It really is, I can't walk away. And I am going to make more money than my team does. So we have to find ways to cultivate their loyalty, their dedication to the mission of the business, whatever it might be, and their dedication to us. And in order to do that, the Beatles said, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. The loyalty you take is equal to the loyalty you make. So we have to give it, but we also have to kind of expect it in return. It really has to be a very, very free-flowing two-way street.
How can people best cultivate that? Like, what are some practical things that people work on to make that happen?
What I talked about before is just building the mission together, understanding what it is we are serving, understanding that this is about people first and everything else second. Then, of course, is going to play together. A dinner every now and then. We do. I have been blessed lately. Last 2 years, I haven't done it for obvious reasons, but I take the team on a continuing education trip. We get on a plane, we fly somewhere, we learn, we eat, we drink, we laugh, and we come back smarter and more unified. So I'm hoping we can get on a plane this year and go out to either the American Academy for Oral Systemic Health or another one of my mentors out in Seattle, and work with them on a whole health dental practice. So
that's awesome.
That's a real treat for them.
That's pretty straightforward. If you had all the dentists all on one stage or one room, what would be your one message to them?
Lead with love. Everything else falls into place. And when you lead with love, start with yourself. Learn to love yourself. Learn to accept yourself and embrace yourself for who you are. Make yourself, watch this, better, richer, and stronger, and take others with you.
How do you define, how can someone know if they love themselves or not?
That's a great question. I think it's your self-talk. It's really knowing that even though you're imperfect, and you always will be, that you're doing sacred work in the world, and that you're acting, I hope you're acting, in a consistent but imperfect manner in being kind and caring toward yourself. Take care of yourself, maintain your body, maintain your brain, maintain your economic health, and really understand that by fulfilling others, you're fulfilling yourself. Look at yourself with a little respect. Be as kind to yourself as you are to your patients. You're always sweet and kind to these patients who are embarrassed or in agony, and you get them out of agony with a gentle touch. use that gentle touch on yourself as well. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for your imperfections. You were made in the image of God if you're religious, but you ain't God, and you're never going to be.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good way to put it. So, okay, so if someone wants to reach out to you, learn more about your book that you got here, or learn more about the services that you offer to dentists, how can they get a hold of you?
Best way, email, betterricherstronger@gmail.com. Or my Facebook group is my most active thing. I've got a website called betterricherstronger.com, but I'm very active on Facebook. That is my modus operandi right now. I'm always trolling Facebook between patients, and I've always got something to say. Find me on Better, Richer, Stronger, and we have some tremendous education opportunities there as well.
That's awesome.
I would love to have plenty of people on there. And I also do virtual coffees with anybody. Dentist who has a question, dentist who has a problem. I will spend 45 minutes with you, and all I want to do is listen. And I'm glad to do that and open your eyes to the reality of life in dentistry. It's not perfect. It's not easy, but it is good.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been really, really a big joy. And thank you for trying to make the dental industry better. I can see that you're really passionate about that, and you're giving back. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much, Gary.